Hello my tubers! As promised, I'm going to show you guys how to make this really adorable peppermint pillow. Some of you guys might recognize it from my Christmas apartment tour. I made this pillow from scratch and now you can too. These pillows make a great holiday accent for your home, and I think it's just an adorable way to make it anything a little more festive. So let's get this tutorial started. Alright, so you need to start with a large piece of paper to form your pattern. I don't have one, so I just taped 4 pieces of paper together, which will do the trick. My pillows are 17 inches in diameter, and the center point touches the 8.5 inch mark on my ruler. I just keep the 8.5 inch mark on my ruler kept in the center, and I mark where the 17 inches are along my ruler. And I just twist the ruler along the center and mark where the 17 inches are so that I can outline where the circle would be. When you're done, just connect all the dots, and when you connect all of them, you should have what looks like a pretty decent perfect circle. Alright, so cut out your pattern and we'll keep on moving. Now to form the red peppermint markings, I'm just freehanding how I want my peppermint to look. Some people like to have many stripes. Personally, I don't want to work too hard, so I'm just going to give my peppermint 5 stripes. If you have 4, it actually looks a little funny, so I would recommend at least 5. Once you're happy with how your peppermint looks, go over your pattern with a darker marker. Alright, so the most basic pattern is done. Let's move on. Alright, with some white fabric that is folded over, you're going to go ahead and place your pattern on top of it. I left 1/2 inch of extra fabric all around the edges because this is where your seams are going to be. If you actually cut where your pattern is at, your pillow is going to be smaller when you're done sewing it. So if you want your pillow to be 17 inches in diameter, make sure you leave about 1/2 inch all the way around. When you're done cutting everything apart, you should have 2 white circles. Not 1, but 2, because remember you folded your large fabric in half. Okay, so moving back to your pattern, you're going to make a copy of each of your 5 stripes. I just placed another piece of paper on top and traced the pattern out. And I labeled each of the stripes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can label them whatever you want, colors, shapes, whatever. Don't forget to add on the bottom of each pattern an extra 1/2 inch because this is where you're going to sew your seams. Don't worry about the sides. You only have to do this for the very bottom. Now on a folded over piece of red fabric, you're going to pin your pattern down and cut it out. You don't need to add any extra fabrics to the sides because these stripes are decorative and no seams will be sewn in except for the bottom. And of course, we already added the 1/2 inch on the bottom. You should cut out each of the 5 stripes, and when you're done, you should have 2 copies of each red stripe, so a total of 10 patterns should be cut out. So when you're done cutting everything out, go ahead and start pinning them onto your white circle. Make sure you align the edges on the bottom, and don't forget that you have 2 white circles. On the bottom circle, you should pin the mirrored version of that red stripe down. To get a general idea of how these stripes are spaced apart, I went ahead and laid them all down and pinned them to the fabric. I kept each of the stripes labeled with a colored pin, which will be important later when you get to the very end and you sew everything together. And of course, don't forget to tack on the mirrored image of each stripe on the back so you end up with 2 identical but mirrored peppermint patterns. When you're done pinning everything, notice that I pinned them all with color coordinated pins. Make sure you pin the same color coordinated pins on the back. Just align everything up and have everything ready, set to go for you to sew everything down. Remember, when you're done, you should have two identical but mirrored versions of peppermint patterns, and they should all be color coordinated. You should sew the edges, you don't have to sew the bottom, and keep one pin in them so that you know which pin color goes with which colored red stripes. And it looks something like this when you're done. Alright, now that the face of the pillows are done, we'll move on to the sides. I'm going to get a ruler and measure each of the red and white stripes on the bottom. Since I have 5 red and 5 white stripes, I'm going to have 10 measurements in the end. Make sure you remember which measurement goes with which colored stripe or pin color that you have labeled for the red stripes. On average, my stripes are about 4 to 6 inches each, so I'm going to add an inch to each of them because they will be hidden into the seams. My peppermints are about 6 inches wide, so I'm going to cut 2 strips of fabric, one red and one white, that are 6 inches in width. Here I'm just measuring out 6 inches so that I know where to cut. Alright, so you remember all those measurements that you took of each strip earlier? Well, now you're going to cut each of those measurements out. Remember to add an inch to each one. For example, if you measured one of the red stripes to be 4 inches, you're going to cut out 5 inches. So your square fabric will be 5 by 6. Alright, so go ahead and place each of your cutouts along their corresponding stripe. Make sure it's the right one because you measured each one individually to match it, and if you don't align them up right, your peppermint pillow is going to look kind of funky. So make sure you put them on the right one. I also labeled one of my red stripes with a yellow pin that matches the yellow pin on the corresponding red stripes. This will be helpful when I sew everything together. So go ahead and pin everything together. Make sure you pin them with about 1/2 inch for you to sew your seams on the width of your peppermint pillow. Also be sure that each of the seams face the same direction. You don't want one to be facing in and the other one to be facing out. So I have them all facing up towards me right now. And go ahead and sew them all together. When you look on the right side, this is what they look like. Let's go ahead and align everything up together. I'm taking the ugly sides face upwards, and I'm going to align the yellow pin up with the yellow pin on the stripe, and go ahead and pin these together. And you're going to have the two nice sides facing each other and the ugly sides facing the outside. Go ahead and pin everything up. You should have one of your sides not be attached at all, and that's okay because this is the hole where you're going to stuff your pillow up with stuffing. So once you're done pinning everything together, go ahead and flip your fabric over, and this will be what the nice sides look like when you're done sewing everything together. Alright, so taking the second pillow face, that is the mirror image of your original one, go ahead and align up your pins. So I'm going to line up the yellow pin with the other yellow pin on the peppermint, and you're going to go ahead and pin the ugly faces together and the nice faces facing each other. Pin everything along the circumference with a 1/2 inch seam, and make sure you can align the seams up together as best as you can with the actual peppermint stripe. Done pinning everything together, you should have something that looks like this. Go ahead and sew everything together with your sewing machine and remove the pins along. Alright, so this is my finished sewn piece. I'm going to go ahead and flip everything inside out so that I can see the pretty parts that I made earlier. Remember to remove any extra pins carefully. You don't want to poke yourself. Alright, so this is what it looks like flipped inside out, and you should have one hole on the side for you to stuff your pillow. And this is probably the most fun part of the project. You get to stuff your peppermint pillow with some cotton. You can stuff your pillow to your own personal preference. I don't like my pillows to be too soft, so I actually stuff a little bit more so they're a little more stiff and that the pattern looks nicer. But when you're all done, this is what your peppermint pillow looks like. Just go ahead and sew the opening closed, and you should have this really cute peppermint pillow. This part is optional, but if you want to put a wrapper around your pillow, you can. I'm using a sheer piece of fabric, and I'm just wrapping it around the pillow like a piece of candy. Once you wrapped your candy to your satisfaction, on each side, I pretty much gathered up all the extra fabric and tied a knot on each side. It doesn't have to be perfect, and if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you can always readjust and retie it to however you want. Once you're happy with how the knot looks and how the fabric and candy looks, you can just cut off all the excess fabric that you don't want so that the piece of candy looks a little more tamed. And that's it, guys. Your peppermint pillows are done. It took a little more work, but it ended up being this really cute and creative pillow. I love them so much because I think they're just so unique, and they really add a little festive flavor to your house or apartment. It's kind of a long tutorial, but I hope you guys find it useful. My Instagram username is FlyingNeo. You can follow me there if you care to, and I'll see you guys soon. Ciao!